Don't need to bullshit about prison. You go where the system says you go. So I've seen your case on the telly. He went, you lot are fucked. Kind of surreal at the time. You're gone for 25 years and all this, and the prison population has been at breaking point since I first went to prison. Britain's flagship security jail is basically a prison within the prison. The HSU, probably a different world. We didn't know what Belmarsh was going to be like, but we soon found out. He lifted up the bunk bed that long out from the leg of the bed, and I just thought, hell. Home Office decision to make you Category A. If you are believed to have the means and the contacts to make a genuine escape attempt, the system reacted to anyone who kicked off in Belmarsh. The troops come from everywhere, far and wide, and they arrive almost instantly. I've seen people wrapped up, beaten up and carried off to the SEG, and you don't see them again. If something happens and it's one of those things where it has to be dealt with, then you have to go and deal with it. The minute you appear at my door, you're getting that launched all over you. Prison law is prison law. The rules are different.
Piers, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Dodge. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, mate. It was, people absolutely loved that first episode.
Well, yeah, I got a lot of comments saying that you really need to come back and do another one. Yeah. So, and I guess you must have as well. And
yeah, mate.
And here we are.
Yeah, amazing. The amount of comments like, we need a part two, we need a part two. I was like,
yeah,
right, Piers, you fancy it? You're like, yeah, mate, let's go and do it. The beauty of it, I think, what people loved is just the calmness and the honesty and just everything's cards on the table. There's no bullshit. This is how it was. This is how it is.
Yeah.
You know, so here we are, mate.
It's something I've said many times over the last 20 odd years since I was first arrested. You don't need to bullshit about prison. The reality's better than any fiction that's my opinion anyway. So, yeah.
It's the humility, mate. It's how you tell it in a humble way that people like, I like this fella.
Well, I guess I'm lucky that that's kind of my natural demeanour. So, yeah, I'll go with it.
Quality. Anyway, let's roll the way back again.
Yeah.
I want to know about all the prisons over the 17 years you were inside. I want to know about all the 13 prisons, please.
Yeah. Okay. Well, originally in 2003, we were remanded from Woking Magistrates Court and we went to Highdown in Sutton. As soon as we got there, people knew who we were and what it was about, and within a few days we kept having people going, you know, you're going to go to Belmarsh, and you don't want to fucking go there. Do whatever you can, whatever it takes to avoid going there. But of course, you can't. You go where the system says you go. So we spent about 2 weeks in Highdown. We did have an appearance at the Old Bailey, and we did manage to blag our way back to Highdown. But then about 3 days after that, there was a knock on the cell door. I was sharing with two of my codees, and I was up. It was about 6 o'clock. I was already up, and the flap opened, and there was a gym screw standing there, and he said, you three need to pack your stuff, you're moving. And I said, oh, what, to another wing? And he went, no, you're being transferred to Belmarsh. And I said, no, we're back here for a reason. That's why they brought us back from the Old Bailey. I was just trying to blag.
Yeah.
And he said, well, look, you're on the list to go. He said, how do you want to go is up to you, because we can come and wrap you up and carry you, and we'll use your head to open all the gates on the way to reception, or you can pack your shit and be ready in half an hour. The boys were awake by now, by the end of this conversation, and we were new to prison. We didn't want any ag, so we just got our stuff together, like little tiny bag of nothing, and off we went. Wow. So, but yeah, Highdown, I remember one of Ben, my main co-defendant, I remember one of his friends shouting out a window to us. We were on the exercise yard, and he said, oh, Ben, I've seen your case on the telly. He went, you lot are fucked. And I just thought, I really didn't need to hear that at the time. No. I knew it. I just didn't want people to confirm it for me. So we had that. And I remember a really nice female officer called Miss, yeah, oh, that's bad. I can't remember her name. She, I think she could see that we were fresh fish and completely lost, like, you know, rabbits caught in headlights. And she came and opened our door one day and said, "Do you want to have a job?" And she gave me a job in cleaning up the exercise yard. It was a pointless task, but it gave us a bit of fresh air, a bit of time out of the cell, and that was really nice for her.
Just for anyone who hasn't listened to episode 1, what did you get nicked for originally?
The first time I ended up with charges, multiple, conspiracy to supply Class A, Class B, various firearms possession, counterfeit money, stolen cars. I had my fingers in lots of pies back then, and the charge sheet was pretty long and kind of broad. So we knew straight away that we were banging trouble, but because I'd never been nicked before, none of us had, we didn't really understand the kind of the actual potential consequences. The police used to tell me in the police station, you know you're gone for 25 years and all this, and it's kind of surreal at the time. You're hearing what they're saying, but there's so much going on inside your head that you're not really processing anything particularly. It's all just bouncing around. Yeah. So we were in trouble, and
you got charged for you got put away for 17 years in that first.
sentence. Yeah, I did. I pleaded guilty at the Old Bailey in the end, and I waited a year after my pleas to get sentenced, and I ended up with 17 years.
Okay. And how many prisons in that first sentence did you go to?
I think I probably ended up doing about 7 or 8 on that first one.
Okay.
So started in Hidedown, and then we were off to Belmarsh. And
what was the difference between Hidedown and Belmarsh for a listener out there? I want to explain to what Belmarsh actually is.
Well, Hidedown at that time was a Category A prison, a same as Belmarsh, a B-Cat local with Category A. But the Category A was just finishing. Belmarsh is, I believe, still called like Britain's flagship security jail. It's got the HSU, which is, the security area. It's basically a prison within the prison, and Belmarsh is a very, very secure jail anyway. So the HSU, probably a different world, and I came really, really close to ending up in there at one point in my time, but I never had the pleasure.
What's your day-to-day like? You're going in from a lad from Surrey with a nice upbringing, getting caught up, getting nicked, and then doing Swellside. Is it Swellside, you say?
I did end up there after Belmarsh. Okay. Yeah.
So what was it like going from where you were going straight into Belmarsh? How would you explain Belmarsh, like high security unit with a prison within a prison?
Well, I would explain it as, first of all of our kind of thoughts on it were prejudiced by everything that was being said to us in Hidedown. And, clearly a lot of people were of the mindset of, you just don't fucking want to be there. When we arrived there, you just keep your head down. I like to be quiet and observe. The first cell, they separated all of us. There was 4 of us that went from Hidedown. I think we all stayed on the same wing. Yeah, we did, but different parts. The first cell they put me in, I had a bed pack under my arm and not much else, and the door opened. It was dark inside. They put me in there. There were 2 fellas in there. It was kind of, I wouldn't say it was frosty, but obviously it's, there's 2 people in a tiny cell, and now there's another one. These 2 guys, I found out quite quickly, were both on murder charges. So that was kind of, at the time for me, that was fairly unusual. Yeah, it was unusual. And I couldn't help but think, Jesus, how did this happen? How have I ended up, these 2 guys, I'm sure they're fine, but they're both charged with murder. So, They were all right. I did something that is usually a winner. I just pulled out my tobacco and chucked it on the table and said, "Help yourself." And we all had a roll up and we got talking. I remember they called exercise not long after I got in there, and they both jumped up and said, "Are you coming out?" And I would have, because I wanted to see my co-defendants. Yeah. But when the Jamaican guy, Akil, he lifted up the bunk bed and pulled a shank about that long out from the leg of the bed. And I just thought, actually, I think I'll just stay in here, because I didn't know what was going on. I don't think anything happened, but I didn't want to, I'm trying to find my feet in a jail, and I'm trying to find my feet within the prison system. So, I didn't bother going out that day, but they were all right as it goes. They weren't bad.
How long were you in there for?
In that cell with them, a couple of days. Okay. And then we'd slowly, without being too assertive about it, we managed to talk to a couple of screws, and they put three of us back together, and we went from there. I think Ben and me. Put
three of you back together. They put your code with you?
Yeah, two of them.
Do you not think, were you thinking, hold on, mate, they put the code with you? Do you not think there's any bugs in there to actually have conversations?
We were paranoid as you like about it. Yeah, I mean, I can remember that we went through a bit of a spell of thinking our food was being drugged, because every time we had lunch in the cell, it's only, cold rubbish. We would all fall asleep afterwards, and we couldn't really, because I don't sleep during the day, but I think it was probably just the stress of everything that had gone before had made us kind of tired, Our lives had changed, gone from one end of the spectrum to the other, and I don't know, but I mean, we were glad to be together, because probably because misery loves company a little bit, but also you do get that slight feeling of it's a bit more secure. We didn't know what Belmarsh was going to be like, but we soon found out. So,
how long were you in Belmarsh for?
Just under 2 years before I got moved. I did some time in there as a Category A.
What does Category A actually mean for the listener out there?
It's the highest security band for prisoners. So the criteria it's a Home Office decision to make you Category A. The criteria include things like if you are believed to have the means and the contacts to make a genuine escape attempt, if you're a serious threat to prison staff and or the public, and stuff like that. And sometimes you'll just be Cat A because you're very high profile. Everyone in the public knows who you are. And there are kind of various little permutations, but essentially it's because you're a badass, I suppose. I don't know.
Yeah. Right. And how long do you get locked up for?
In a normal day in Belmarsh, at least 23 hours.
So there's just 1 hour you can go on the yard and exercise?
If you're lucky. I remember one particular officer, I was on Beirut, House Block 3 for the first year.
Is that what they called it, Beirut?
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, it's kind of a generic term for all the shitty parts of all prisons now, but when I was there, and it's still called Beirut, you'd be lucky to get exercise twice a week. You'd be lucky. The thing is, as well, the time out of your cell, I remember this from the very early part, you'd get unlocked, you'd have 2 or 3 phones catering for probably 100 blokes. There's no time limit on calls, so the biggest, baddest bloke would just hog the phone. I remember constantly having this dilemma of, shall I have a shower today? Shall I try and make a phone call? If you try and make a phone call, you could end up with no shower, no phone call. So it was difficult. But again, in the bigger picture, those things were actually relatively kind of unimportant because so much shit was going on. If I didn't get a phone call, I hate not having a shower, I'm going to say that, but the showers were shit anyway. It would be a dribble of freezing cold water, the shower full of God knows what
Yeah.
and God knows who, you know.
Did you ever have the fear of going in the showers?
Funny enough, before we went to Belmarsh, in Highdown, we'd been there maybe a couple of days, and I'm thinking, I need a shower. I can't stand this. We got unlocked at 8 a.m, and I went straight to the shower block, and I walked in and there was no one in there, and I thought, what's going on? And I've gone in, and it's a big room with lots of shower heads, but it's all open. There's no cubicles, anything like that. The floor was about an inch deep with water because it didn't drain away. I got soaking wet, my clothes all ruined, changing because you just had to stand in a puddle of water. And I'll be honest, I genuinely thought that I was going to get rushed in there because it just didn't feel right. And I thought, why are there no people? Were they waiting for a victim to go in, you know? And I had a fucking shower, cold shower, and it was normal, and I didn't get bummed, so I was happy, you know.
That must be the biggest fear, right? Because if you're fresh off the street, living in a 5-star lifestyle, going straight into that, and you see all the rumours of about prisons, you're in there as a how old you been when you first got in there?
I was
30 years old. Yeah.
You don't, you know. And the thing is, you come in, I was just a member of the public until that moment. So I had heard all my life, don't drop your soap in the showers. So you carry that in with you, but actually, you know, it was fine. It was fine. Things do happen, but they didn't happen to me.
It's more targeted in the showers when people go in showers having a tear up, isn't it? When someone's more vulnerable.
Definitely. Showers are, because even like now prisons are just awash with CCTV, but they haven't got round to putting it in showers yet. They will. Yeah. They will, but you know, so yeah.
What did you see in Belmarsh that massively shocked you?
I think I saw the way that the system reacted to anyone who kicked off in Belmarsh. When this is 20 plus years ago, but when they hit a general alarm in Belmarsh, fucking hell, the troops come from everywhere, far and wide, and they arrive almost instantly, and they don't fuck about. I've seen people wrapped up, beaten up, and carried off to the SEG, and you don't see them again. And over the time I was there, how I felt about the place was there was a lot of active psychological oppression in there. They want to, I can only speak for myself, of course, but I felt all the time I was there that they want to keep their foot on your neck, but on your brain as well. And I found that difficult, really difficult, because I could see what was going on. You're punishing my mind. You know, the punishment is to be there, nothing more. And that's the official line. But yeah, I could see that it was just psychologically really, really tough in there at the time. Maybe it was just me, I don't know. But that was the general kind of atmosphere that I picked up.
Did anyone try to start on you at any point in Belmarsh? Did you keep yourself to yourself, or was there any ag at any point?
There was a few bits and bobs. I was there for 2 years. I had a couple of fights I was a gym orderly for a year before I left. And to be fair, the gym screws, if I had something going on with someone and they got any kind of sense of it, they used to say to me, right, the door to the changing rooms from the office is going to be shut. Do what you need to do. We didn't see or hear anything. And, you know, fair play. Things were sorted out one way or another. And, you know, I'm not a bully. I don't go around having fights with people for no reason. But prison law is prison law. The rules are different. And if something happens and it's one of those things where it has to be dealt with, then you have to go and deal with it. And even if you get a battering, at least you front it up, and people will respect that. And you know, so but if you try and hide from the situation, then you're just you're a pussy, you're a grass, you're a screw boy, whatever it is. So you have to play to the prison rules, and in Belmarsh, the prison rules were very clear cut back then.
Was that the toughest prison out of all the prisons you've been to in terms of rules and regulations? And
yeah, in a lot of ways it was, especially the time I was Category A. That's a whole different game.
So Category A in Belmarsh, have they got chains on you anywhere when you're walking around? Have you ever had that?
No, but even so, a lot of Category A's end up in the HSU, the high security unit. If you're a Cat A on normal location, the days are kind of different and difficult. You get strip searched a lot. You have to move cell every 28 days. You're not allowed, particularly, well, back then you weren't really allowed any of your own possessions. I think you had to actually wear prison clothes.
What, to be seen as different?
Yeah, just to be seen as different. And obviously in the times when you're moved, you go to court or whatever, then that's a whole different ball game. Police escort through every red light, just boom, straight to the Old Bailey, wearing a Category A suit, a jumpsuit, which is a clear identifier. Just
what colour? What colour?
Green and yellow. Some of them, they do vary a bit, but the green and yellow one, and it's got HM Prison right across the back. You know, you can't miss them. So Category A is different, and again, it's just that little bit more oppressive in its way. You know, you can't feel any semblance of settled because you're not settled, and that's the point. They don't want you to settle. They want to keep you disrupted, so you can't particularly focus on your escape plan, whatever it is. You know, so you sit in a different place in the visits hall. You do. I remember before I was Category A, I was a listener, and Nicholas van Hoogstraten was there. He was in the unit. Yeah. He was on appeal for his case. And he was a listener.
What was his case again?
Well, he was accused of hiring 2 hitmen to kill his ex-business partner, I think.
That's right.
And I believe Nick got done for possibly assisting an offender or perverting the course, something like that. Yeah. And the rumour in the prison was he spent a lot of money on his appeal, because, let's be fair, he's got a lot of money to spend if he wants to. And he won his appeal. I saw it on the news from my prison cell. He was running across the road from the Court of Appeal with 2 of his girlfriends, loving life and gone. And, fair play, good luck to him.
What was your next step from there? So you've done 2 years in there. You've got a 17-year sentence. Yeah. You're looking at doing 8.5. Where do you move on to next?
So we went from there to Swaleside, and there were, at the time, there were only 2 real possibilities for movement for us. We were Category B. That wasn't going to change. So
you went from Category A at Belmarsh to Category B.
Yeah.
Why did they make that change?
No one knows.
Okay.
I mean, I'll tell you how it sort of panned out. I was working, and a mutual friend of mine and Ben, who was on a different wing, he collared me and he said, "Look, Ben asked me to let you know he's been told because Ben was really well liked by staff and inmates on Beirut. Yeah. He was the number one. He was a good guy, and the screws would talk to you on a level, and one of them said to him, 'Listen, you and Ravenhill are going in the unit tomorrow.' So I got that news, and I thought, okay, I thought about it in my cell that night, and I wasn't particularly bothered by it. I kind of was thinking it can't be that much worse than what I'm doing already, and if it is, I'll just suck it up and get on with it. The next morning, my door opened, was one of the gym screws, said, "What are you doing? You coming to work?" And I said, "No, I don't think so. I think you'll find I'll be otherwise occupied." He said, "No, you won't, because the Home Office took you and Rickwood off the book last night." So I was Category B again, and we didn't go in the unit. There's a tiny, tiny part of me that actually would have quite liked to have been in the unit for a small amount of time, because I don't know, I'm a bit funny like that. I would think, yeah, I can tick that one off my prison list, you know. Not that I'm there to fucking, make it a great journey or anything, but we'd heard so much. I've got friends in the time I was in prison. Plenty of people I got friendly with had been in the unit. There were in Belmarsh in particular, when we were there were actual friends of ours who were in the unit and then came out of the unit. It's an interesting thing because some people ride it very comfortably and some people it absolutely fucks them. Yeah. And there was one guy in particular, I won't say his name, but he's a nice guy. They were in Belmarsh for a cash in transit type robbery. I think it was at Heathrow. And he came out of the unit pretty much broken, and he recovered, but I just thought, wow, I didn't expect it from him. He's a tough guy, but you just don't know. You put anyone in a certain environment, set of circumstances, and it can be sink or swim, and you can't predict for people. So there you go.
Have you ever anyone come in and wrap you up?
No, not exactly, but I was raided in Pentonville on my second sentence by a Tornado team. They'd come to do targeted searches in Pentonville, and my door crashed open about 3:00 in the morning. They were screaming and shouting. I didn't know what the fuck. I jumped up and I put my hands up, and then I started to see, because it was dark as well, and I think they use plastic keys to open your door so you don't hear it. And boom, they come in. When I came to my senses in, a few seconds, then I realised what was going on. But I was taken out of the cell in handcuffs, taken down to the bottom floor of the wing, put in a shower room, locked in there. And I stood there watching cockroaches climbing the walls for about 2 hours. They come back, put me back in my cell. They had fucking destroyed everything. They didn't find anything. There was nothing to find. I'd only been in the jail about a week anyway. So, and I put a formal complaint in about it, actually, because I was so fucking annoyed. Because my complaint was this: listen, I could have quite easily lamped one of your fucking team and I'd have got nicked for that and possibly even outside charges. But what do you expect someone to do when you just crash in? I was fast asleep. You don't know what's going on. So, I didn't get any particular reply for the complaint, and I'm not really a complaint sort of person, if I'm honest. So
give me an example what it looked like. How many men? What were they wearing?
They were in, I suppose, what you'd call combat fatigue, balaclavas, all black. That was more or less it. Just they didn't bring riot shields or anything like that. They might have had them behind them. Okay. But the initial two were just bods in all black, just blending into the blackness of the cell. And
what a shock! What a shocker for
you. They do. They come in and it's like they throw a stun grenade in.
Yeah.
Because they're going, don't fucking move and stay here. I'm a fucking sleep in bed. What do you expect me to be doing? But some people are really quick and really well prepared for stuff like that. I wasn't, because I'm not really in that kind of category of prisoner. In that, I didn't really.
Did they say what they were looking for?
No.
Or can they just make it up? Just to are they there just to get into your head? Do you reckon?
So what happens is when they come like that, and sometimes it's just the screws in the prison, and it'll be in a more sensible time of the day. But this one, they come from other prisons, and they will have a list. Say on the wing I was on, G wing, it's a big wing. It's the biggest prison wing in Europe, I think. So they probably had 10 people, but they'll chuck a few in to throw people off the scent.
Yeah.
Probably I was just one of the unlucky randoms that they chucked in, because they don't want to just hit the 10 people. Yeah. They want people to wonder
what's going on.
Why him?
Everyone. Yeah,
why, obviously, why him? We all know about him, but why him? Otherwise, it's kind of pretty basic throw them off the scent stuff.
You know your man earlier. You said you shared a cell with a Jamaican, and you had that shank there.
Yeah.
Have you seen anyone been shanked inside?
Yeah, I have a few times. Sad to say, but especially on my second sentence, shanks are 2 a penny in there, in all jails really. And I mean, I had a disagreement with a fella in Pentonville. They kept threatening to stab me for extra milk. I worked on the servery. And
hold on. So you're serving them, giving them milk.
Yeah, you get.
And if you didn't give them extra milk, they're threatening to stab you later on.
Yeah, that happened every day with someone or a little group of certain types of people, certain nationalities are a bit more
What
prevalent.
sort of nationalities?
Well, Somalians in Pentonville were pretty lively, young guys. Value of life to them is pretty much nothing. I think Somalia's been in civil war for about 30 years, so people get ironed out all day, every day. And I guess these young guys have come to Britain, but they've seen and heard and they kind of embrace that whole sort of gang culture. They take their civil war culture and just tweak it to fit in. But yeah, I saw a fella get stabbed in Pentonville when I was there. It was over, he'd been accused of skimming a parcel that had been delivered to him of drugs, spice, bits and bobs. And yeah, when they got it, they weren't happy, so they just stabbed him. I think he was relatively lucky. He got stabbed in the arm a couple of times. Obviously, I saw what I saw, and a few other people did too, because it was in broad daylight. No one gives a shit, to be honest.
What's just the norm? Get on with it.
It kind of is.
I'm not interested in looking at it. I'll go back in myself.
I mean, for me personally, especially on my second sentence, when something kicks off, everyone, it's like a bunch of meerkats, you know, but I'm the bloke walking the other way because I've seen it all before and I don't give a fuck. It's not me, so why bother myself? And it's human nature, but my nature was to I don't want to be a voyeur. I don't want to see someone getting hurt.
Yeah.
I don't want to see a bloke getting wrapped up by screws. I've seen it all. It's all the same. Yeah. It's a bit like having conversations on the landing. I've had the same conversation 1,000 times over the years. So by the end of my last few years, I didn't even bother being on the landing. Yeah. I'd be in my cell or in a mate's cell, whatever.
What's it like knowing you're banged up for 23 hours in the hope that you can get out and do some exercise? What are you doing all day? What are you thinking about? What's going through the whole head the whole time? Knowing that you've got a 17-year sentence, knowing you've got to do 8.5 years behind bars.
Yeah.
And then to come out for 3 years and you've got another 17-year sentence to do 8.5 years behind bars. Like that second sentence, when you knew you got another 17, you're thinking, I know how that feels. And that first batch I did, I've now got to go back and do a second batch of that. Was that tougher?
It was condensed in a massive way because I knew from the minute they arrived at my door that I was in banging trouble again because I knew what I had. And I'd been out of hospital for 6 weeks. I had severe traumatic brain injury. So I was carted off to prison, unable to take care of myself in any way, unable to think, speak properly, to see properly. But I was compass enough to know how much trouble I was in. So the whole thing came together and I was just like, oh my fucking God, sitting in a cell on my own with brain damage, worrying about other people that I had been affected by my shit. And it was difficult. And I've said this openly on TikTok and in 1 or 2 places. I was genuinely ready and prepared for my own suicide for probably the first 3-4 months that I was in prison the second time. I just thought, you know what? It's dead. It's finished. You might as well just check out, mate, because you're fucked anyway from this accident. You're never going to recover from that. And now you're going to try to recover down a hole. And yeah, I genuinely was suicidal. I had everything I needed. I know about times that screws open your door flap and all of that, and I had it all planned. I just stopped myself every time when I was on the brink, just thought about my daughter, and I did think about my she was my girlfriend at the time. She was nicked. I knew that she wasn't involved, and I thought, you have to stay alive because you need to try to help in whatever way you can. And those two things kept me alive for months. And because I definitely wanted to go, I just thought, I've had enough. I'm no value to anyone or anything, and I'm no value to myself. Look at me. Look what I've done to myself again. You fucking idiot. So I had all that, but I managed to somehow just work my way through it. And
going back there, how did you actually get brain damage and in a coma before your second sentence?
I came off my mountain bike. No one especially knows how it happened. There's rumours that it was a hit put on me. I don't believe that personally. As I said to people sort of further back, when I was first told, I said, well, look, if it was a hit, you wouldn't be standing talking to me. I don't know people who are involved like that, where someone actually walks away from it. You're dead, you're gone. So forget about that. I just came off my mountain bike. That's all I can say, and smashed my head. 6 skull fractures, broken neck, airlifted to St. George's, in a coma, in a bad way in hospital. Really bad way in hospital. I came out of my coma. I started a fight with all the hospital staff from prone in a bed. They had to induce me to kind of get control of it. Came out of the coma, was horrible to everyone, thought I was in prison, kept asking my girlfriend to help me escape. And in the end, she walked around, took some photos, hospital type stuff, and said, you're not in prison. You're okay. And that, I guess that time there was the beginning of my road, my long road to recovery. And the road went on and on.
So you come out of prison, you've done 8.5, you're 3 years out, but you got straight back into selling drugs and earning a load of money again.
Yeah.
You then got knocked off your bike, got into a coma. When you come out of the coma and you're back in civilian life, how long was it before you got nicked again?
6 weeks.
So 6 weeks after that, then they were like, right, we're nicking you for, what did they nick you for the second time?
Well, they raided my house. I was stood in the kitchen one morning. My girlfriend was in the back garden. She was driving me around at the time because I wasn't legally allowed to drive, even if I wanted to.
Why?
Because of the brain damage, and I had 6 nerve palsy, so my right eye was pointing over here. And yeah, I remember hearing noise, and I knew instantly. I'd been there before, and I knew, and I just stood where I was and waited for them. They came through the back door. It was a little bit less chaotic than my first arrest. They weren't armed for a start, but there was a few of them, and they were trying to smash down the front door, which was, they couldn't do it because it was a lovely old building with a huge oak solid door, and they couldn't smash it down. And yeah, I just stood there and waited for the inevitable, and in they came.
So when you got put away, what was it like being in Nick, knowing you've got just had brain damage, you're probably not thinking straight, knowing you got another 17, knowing that you got to do another 8.5, like you were saying, you felt suicidal. Yeah. On those suicidal thoughts, what was your way out for you at that time? Of
suicide, of the situation? Yeah. The way out was the same as it was the first time around. You've got to do what you fucking got to do, and that's that. So get on and fucking do it. And even with brain damage, even with the feeling at my lowest ebb, it's just a part of me to just be like, listen, whatever comes your way, you've got to fucking deal with it. That's life. Okay. So that's what I did.
Okay.
Yeah. It was very, very difficult the second time around. It was so different that I couldn't, there's so much difference between the first time and the second time for all kinds of reasons. But yeah.
What reasons would you explain the first time different to the second time? Was it different people in the prison? Was it different screws? Was there more, like you say, there was more Somalians that didn't have younger kids who didn't care about their life and would do anything for tobacco or just to... What was the vibes like on both of them?
I think, generally speaking, for the first time, even Belmarsh, but certainly Swellside, it was just more what I would call old school villains.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, even on Beirut in Belmarsh, we still had a good dozen, 15, maybe 20 guys who you would happily sit in a bar with and chat, and, you know, the rest of them, not so much. And then moving to Swellside, pretty much the whole of my side of the wing was what you call chaps, really.
Fellas, yeah. Nice.
And that was great in the sense of being a fucking newbie and not really having a clue. I learned my own way and I did prison my own way. That is, you know, that was set in stone. Right or wrong, I went my own route. But you'd be a fool and you'd be also completely blinkered not to learn some really useful life hacks of prison, if you like. And these guys, okay, they have that because they've had the bit of experience as well. But the truth of it is, a lot of these guys were just more life experience than me. My background was different. I wouldn't say that I was particularly street or anything like that. Those are things that I learned probably in prison more than anywhere. So, the first time, most of the first sentence was I just remember being surrounded by what I would call, you know, relatively decent people. Second time, I did the whole thing on my own, really, from beginning to end. I had a few acquaintances, but no one I would have spent much time with outside of jail. And once I started to see that, I could see how much prison had changed in the 3 years I was out. I mean, really stark contrast.
So just on that contrast, what year are we talking you went in the first hit? What year was that?
So 2003, and I was released in 2011.
For the first one, then 3 years out. So 2003, 2011, 3 years out, back in 2014.
Yeah.
To what, couple of years back? So 2014 to 2023.
Yeah.
What was the difference between 2014 to 2023?
The first thing, and even with my brain damage, I clocked it straight away. If you screamed and shouted and threatened the screws enough, you could get more or less whatever you wanted. And that never happened on my first sentence. You would get wrapped up in a New Delhi minute and gone. But and I preferred it the old way because you know where you stand. And I'm not a tantrum kind of person, really. Not in that respect, anyway. So even though I knew how to work the system, I didn't. I'm not going to stand there screaming and shouting and threatening a female officer. I'm just not about that. That's not the person I am. So what I learned is that if you just adopt a little bit of patience and speak to the right people and don't expect it in 5 minutes, it will come. If you're, if it's something that's valid and you're entitled to. But not everyone, but so many people in the system now, they just want the shortest route from A to B. And if you're a screw, you'd better fucking make it happen. All this or that, I know where you live and all this bullshit. And
what, the prisoners to the screws?
Yeah. And
did you see the screws change?
Oh, yeah. I mean, all the old school screws, like all the old school villains, had all gone.
All gone. So Jules Shipton was the one who we had on, who everyone massively respected.
Yeah.
And I think we said before, to get him back into the prison system would massively probably help the prison system.
It would, but his problem would be that he would be a kind of lonely beacon in a sea of trouble.
Yeah, okay.
So that would be great.
Yeah.
But how much actual impact it could have, you need essentially to even think about trying to adjust how shit it is. you need an army of George Shiptons.
Yeah, okay.
And I can name others. I remember names of good screws through my whole time, and there are some. There were the second time.
What names spring to mind? Good screw.
I was just talking this morning about a fella in Belmarsh called Mr. Morning. He was a great guy, big lump, could have it. I think he was ex-military, but he was a bit like George in that you could have a normal conversation with him. You'd share a roll-up even on the exercise yard. And those people that we can all relate backwards and forwards because they're kind of normal.
Yeah.
Now, I can't even describe it really. Wet behind the ears, no life experience. Not all of them, but a lot. And I think to me, it highlighted the desperation just to get more screws in the system by the government, by the Home Office, because prison, the whole system was, and probably, I'm sure it still is, absolutely on its arse in 100 different ways. I don't know what the answers are, but we sort of touched on this before. The answers could definitely include one or two people like me. I wouldn't necessarily want to do that, but if you can be sensible and try and sort of slightly get yourself away from this us and them thing, because it's last year, it's gone now, all that us and them. So it still is to an extent, don't get me wrong. I'm not giving them anything that's any use to them, but I can at least be civil and have a conversation. And there are, I can think of many ex-prisoners through my time who would be beneficial, but
they don't want to go back there.
They don't want to listen to us because we're all scumbag criminals. And that's a terrible thing.
How did you feel when you saw that Keir Starmer took thousands of people out of the prison system a couple of months back?
Well, to me, again, it just highlighted how fucked the system is, because it's not a vote winner and that's all they really care about. And then we had instances of lots of these people being recalled within a few days because they've all gone fucking batshit crazy back to their old life. So it's a funny thing, because to me, I thought that the general public would have been in uproar about it anyway. And I'm sure sections of it were. I don't really follow the news a lot, but I remember when I first heard it being touted, I said that'll never happen. That was touted a few times when I was inside, even on my first sentence, because the truth of it is the prison population has been at breaking point since I first went to prison. Somehow they manage, they've done the whole police cells thing before during my first sentence, and of course what they did, I noticed on my second sentence, was that there are many more double cells now. And one example, on my first sentence, if you were doing a life sentence, they had to give you a single cell. Now they don't.
Okay.
So I don't know how that affects people doing a life sentence, positively, negatively. I guess it's down to the individual, but they just keep shucking more and more beds in cells, and it's just madness, really. But
how did the prisoners change your second stint in prison? What did you notice with the different type of prisoners in there?
Yes, similar thing. Like once it's like an infection. This whole screaming and shouting, threatening, stamping your feet. What if anyone sees a positive result from that? Then the whole system.
Yeah.
We know what to do. And so, excuse me, there was a lot more of that, a lot more people like that. And of course it gives them a bit of swagger. They think they're Johnny Big Potatoes because they've cracked that nut, and it gives them a false sense of self on a wing in a prison. So I used to just quietly look at some of these, Billy Big Balls running around thinking there's something. And it took me back to the way I used to kind of hear it and see it on my first sentence. There is an element of anyone can be anyone in prison, because no one can provenance your story particularly until, if you're in your local jail, someone comes off the street who actually does know you outside and they expose you for everything you actually are. But, you know, yeah, prisoners are different. And I was different. I was in a different stage of my life. I went away at 30, came out at 39, and then I'm doing my second sentence well into my 40s, and I came out, what was it, just before or after my 50th birthday. And I was then in that category of, oh, prison's a young man's game, this ain't for me. And I used to hear my older peers and mentors on my first sentence saying it. And it made me smile, because I thought, and here you are, you're that old man now, looking at these lot thinking, Jesus Christ, you know, these lot are insane, really. So yeah, different stage of life, different mindset. But
what percentages would you say are foreign prisoners versus British prisoners in the prisons you were on your second sentence?
I think it will in some ways depend on what prison you're in, where it's located. But yeah, not necessarily more, but different nationalities.
Yeah.
I think the first time more Jamaicans, more Turkish. Second time Polish, Lithuanian, Somalian. So just, I guess, a kind of shift in society equals a shift in the prison system. But in terms of the ratio of English or British to foreign nationals, more foreign nationals the second time around. I couldn't really put a figure on it. I'd say in general maybe 20-25%, but then when I was in Pentonville that went up. That was probably closer to 30-40 in parts of the prison. And to be fair, Dodge, it's not something that I paid a massive amount of attention to. Where you were from didn't particularly interest me. It was how you shaped up in front of me, or in general. Were you the sort of person that I wouldn't give the time of day to? Yes, okay, well, you'll never see me, but I won't ever bother you. How about that? Is, you know, that's fair. And so you kind of make those fairly rapid judgment calls, but at the end of the day, the whole population is so transient anyway. You can have a new next door neighbour every day for a week in certain jails. So you just do your own thing, really. Do you, when you look back at your life, do you have any remorse on serving up when you were active, serving up, or at the time you're just thinking it was money? Was there any knock-on effect, thinking how many of my lives I may be affecting by selling gear? I can honestly say that I genuinely thought about it during both sentences, but where on the first one it was more of a kind of think about it briefly, throw it away, not particularly even trying to have a proper personal understanding of the types of things you've just said there. Second time around, I knew that it was game over, and I wanted to be actively out of crime, and part of that was to spend time sitting and not even realizing, but accepting and actually giving it the time of day that dealing drugs has this huge ripple through society. And I now my mindset is clear. You know, I understand and I'm aware, and I was part of the problem, and I accept that. And anyone is entitled to despise me for my past. I'll totally openly say that. And I do get a few people that say a few things, and you know, you're entitled to that. It doesn't mean I necessarily want you to say it to me, but when you do, my initial reaction, apart from being a little bit upset, because we're all human beings, is to say, yeah, you're right. And I know that. You don't actually need to tell me that. I do know it, but I understand that you want to remind me of that, and that's fine. I remind myself on a regular basis. Trust me on that. Yeah. I don't have those conversations because it's mostly keyboard warriors. They don't want a conversation. They just want to attack you and run away. So
where is it when you're in Nick where you felt the most vulnerable? In your day-to-day, is it when you're going to have a brekkie or lunch or dinner? Or
I'd probably say that fucking first shower in Hidedown, but
haunt you for life, that, wouldn't it?
I think, in a good way now.
Yeah.
But I think, again, that kind of depends on what is going on in your prison life in the moment.
Okay.
So when you've had a bit of a thing with someone, then you're a lot more alert when you're out on the landing, a lot more alert when you're getting your food, or even standing collecting your canteen, or going to visits. If you've had a turnout with someone on another wing, if they bump into you in the visits hall, it's likely to be on again, whatever. It depends. Like, I never had any kind of ongoing stuff really with people. I've had a few tear-ups inside, and afterwards it's not quite shake your hands and wish each other well, but it's done. And if you don't want it to be done, then okay. But generally, it's just all different. Again, the second time, people don't really have punch-ups. It's all about that.
Yeah, okay. Everyone's stabbing.
So I had less. I did have a few fights here and there on the second time around, but I when the red mist comes down, it's hard to have a coherent thought at times, but I was always mindful the second time around. Listen, some minor disagreement could end up with you getting plunged in the neck and it's game over. You know, it's that simple. So I wouldn't say it necessarily stopped me or made me hold my tongue or my hands. It's one of them. I probably used to think of it more 2 minutes after the fight.
Yeah.
Thinking, you know, anything could have happened to you there or him, but I'm not a knife person, but you know, it was different the second time.
What's that feeling like when you've had angst with someone, you clock them and you know it's building up and you're going back to your cell, walking up and down yourself, what you're going to do to him, what you're thinking, the game plan, if he comes at you at that angle, you've got your game plan, what you're going to do. That must have done your absolute Sweden, right?
Yeah, again, it probably depends on the individual, but I am a thinker, and so if I know it's on, or it's looking like it's on, then I'm planning, and I'm planning, and I'm counter planning. And I remember the very first one on my second sentence, and I'd only been in jail about 2 weeks, and I was a cabbage really, Dodge, so I shouldn't have even been entertaining this, but I was queuing for the phone. The guy in front of me finished his call. I went to pick it up. Some guy came up and he said, "That's my spot." And I went, "No, it isn't." He said, "It is. I told that guy," I said, "Listen, mate, we don't do all that I bagsied the phone anymore." He said something like, "You living in dreamland, you better watch yourself." I put the phone down. I didn't make the call. I walked back to my cell, and I couldn't have a fight even if I wanted to. Then I was really in a bad way. So what did I do? I did something very prison-y, something I've never done before or since. I filled my kettle up and switched it on. And I thought, the minute you appear at my door, you're getting that launched all over you, because I can't have a fight, but you came at me like you want to have a fight. Yeah. He didn't come to my door. We didn't speak again. I did get my phone call eventually, but things like that, that's how quickly it can go. And I remember a similar thing with the phone in Belmarsh when I was very first there. The guy was on the phone forever. The bloke behind him tapped him on the shoulder. He turned round and just smashed the headset over the bloke's head. So no one could use the phone then. And off he walked, you know. There are certain things that are very, very black and white in prison, and the phone can be one of those things. It can really make people's blood boil. And I get it. I've been there. You know, you're desperate to speak to your son or your daughter or your wife. And, you know, when you're standing waiting, the pressure rises and rises and rises. I've seen a lot of tear-ups over phones. I'm sure.
Tell me, I want to roll back a little bit more. You mentioned that at the time your girlfriend got nicked as well.
Yeah.
Had you had your kid before you both got nicked?
Well, okay, so just to explain this, my girlfriend who got arrested, we split up actually, truthfully, before my son was born.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was there for my son, and we managed to get a sensible kind of interaction.
How old was your son when you went inside?
He just turned 2.
Wow.
And unfortunately, things didn't pan out with his mum. When I got nicked, she decided that I would not see him all the time I was in prison, and she made that happen. So I didn't see my son again until he was nearly 12. And I instigated that. Well, actually, funny enough, my son instigated it.
Did he?
He found me on TikTok.
Did he?
And he made a comment to a video, "You're my dad." And that was it. And I looked into it, and I found out that that was my boy. And we did see each other a few times last year, but I don't see him again now, because his mum and her boyfriend, not so much her boyfriend, he's kind of stuck in the middle of the situation. Yeah. His mum still says she despises me, doesn't want anything to do with me. That's where we are. I can't really figure out a sensible way to kind of get access to my son. And I'm very honest about it all, because of my past, my entrance into the world, adopted. I'm emotionally really in places very, very thin layer of emotion for me. And part of the reason now that I don't see my son is because I don't even know him anyway. I don't know him from anyone, really. I hadn't seen him for 10 years, and I don't feel any... I have to be brutally honest about it, because it's the truth. I don't feel any
emotion,
real connection with him at all. Yes, he's my son, but that's, so it's difficult. It'll work out somehow, but at the minute it's in limbo. And, you know.
How old is he? Day 12?
Yeah.
Yeah. If he walked in the room, if 5, 6 kids walked in the room, do you know which one your son was?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I shouldn't really say this, but he's an absolute spit of his mum. And I'm not being funny, Dodge, but that doesn't make it any easier either.
Okay.
Because when I was seeing him, I could see his mum, and his mannerisms are very similar as well. And I was just thinking, it made me think about how she treated me.
Yeah.
All right, I went to prison, and I get that, but she knew exactly what I was doing and was benefiting from it as well.
Yeah.
You can't have it both ways. It's pure hypocrisy. And I personally think that not allowing a child to see their parent is child abuse.
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
Yeah.
I'm a normal person. I just happen to have a certain background and past. But anyway, it'll work out.
No, it'll all work out.
He'll
get to an age when he wants to come, and he's got the freedom to come and see you. When he's 15, 16, he's like, "Dad, I want to hook up."
Yeah.
It'll all come back.
Yeah.
100%.
So I have that kind of to fall back on, and I do. It will happen, but it's just not the right moment.
So the second time, your girlfriend at the time, what sentence did she get?
Well, she had a terrible time. She was out on tag, bailed for about a year, and she was going to trial. She pleaded not guilty. The trial kept being put back, and on the last occasion, her barrister stood up and sort of lobbied the judge for some kind of movement. And it was a circuit judge. He was not normally at that Crown Court, but he said, well, what I could do is if we could do what's called a Goodyear hearing, and I can give your client an indication of sentencing if she pleads guilty or if she's found guilty. So they agreed to that, went back that afternoon. He said to her, "I've looked at the case. If you plead guilty now, I will sentence you to no less than 3.5 years, no more than 4.5. If you go to trial, I'll give you 14 years if you're found guilty." So she had to plead guilty to charges that were false.
Yeah.
And I wrote a letter to the judge when we were sentenced, which he referred to. He said he hadn't ever had a letter that was so honest and candid. I was honest and candid. I told him her only crime is being in love with the wrong fella.
Yeah.
But, you know, you can do what you like to me because I'm guilty as you like. But anyway, he referred to that and he ended up giving her 2.5 years. And maybe my letter had some effect on the outcome. I don't know. And I don't claim any credit for it. I did the only thing I could do. And we're no longer together. And I don't think it hasn't really, it was hard for her. It was hard, and it's changed her and it's changed her life. And I feel responsible for that, and I've always felt responsible for it. There's nothing I can do about it now. We were together when I got out, but we just didn't get on anymore. And I made the decision to call time on it. And in hindsight, I know that there was a part of me that was doing that for the wrong reasons anyway. You can't be in a relationship with someone because you feel guilty.
Yeah.
Or you feel like you need to repair them.
Make up for lost time.
I felt like I needed to try and repair her, but actually I still am repairing myself. So, and that's a difficult enough job.
What did she get nicked for?
She got nicked for the same thing as me.
What, exactly the same?
Conspiracy to supply Class A, Class B and Class C. Yeah.
And you were living together at the time?
No, she had her own house with her children.
Oh, so she had kids as well. How old were her kids at the time?
They were 7 and 5, I think, something like that. 6 and 4. 7 and 5, I think. So
she was just the girlfriend of you who was serving up, getting on whatever you were doing with.
Yeah.
And she got caught up in it.
She genuinely got wrapped up in the whole thing, and with my brain damage, I was getting disclosure on remand in Highdown, and of course that's everyone involved. And I'm looking at this stuff and I'm thinking, these people have got a fucking hard on for my girlfriend. Yeah. They want to put her away. Yeah. I don't know why. She'd never even had a parking ticket in her life. And we weren't allowed to have any contact because she was on bail, but we found a way.
Yeah.
And I've got a message to her and I said, you need to talk to your barrister and your legal team about a plea bargain because they're not letting this go. I can see it.
Yeah.
I don't know whether they did have that kind of conversation. I really don't know. But there was no real communication. Obviously, to her legal team, I'm the enemy.
Yeah.
It's a conflict of interest. They're only there to do their best for her. I get that. And if they have to throw me under the bus to achieve that, then they certainly will. And they did during sentencing, but it didn't really affect me. I was gone anyway.
So from what you know now, anyone who you know is out there who's serving up, it's quite easy. The girlfriend or the missus can get completely caught up in it.
It really can. And especially in terms of confiscation orders and all this, that's a whole different ball game. But yeah, I think girlfriends, partners, whatever, they can be on the periphery, but if I don't like to say this because I don't like to believe it. I'm not, I like to believe in things that I can prove and provenance. Yeah. But essentially what happens really is the police, when they nick someone, if there's collateral damage, if there's people caught in the crossfire, they'll go as well because they don't give a shit.
Yeah.
They want to, ultimately their end game is to put as many people away for as long as possible. That's their little pat on the back. And if some people, if people who are innocent and they happen to probably, if not know it, certainly suspect it, they don't care.
Just wrap everyone up.
You think they're going to stand up and go in court and go, no, actually, of course not.
Yeah.
Anything goes, put them all away. That's it. Yeah. That's how I see it now. And I see it from experience, and I never would have, everyone buys into that. I wouldn't have. I'm not the person to buy into all the conspiracy theories and all that. But I've seen it, and I have to say that it does happen and it will continue to happen.
How does it make you feel knowing that you got 2 17-year sentences and we're seeing today that was getting 2 years, 1 year, 3 years?
Well, look, I was having a conversation about this yesterday, because one thing that's has been a constant for me is that I don't know anyone, friend or foe, who doesn't think that relative to sex offenders, my sentences are ridiculous. Relative.
Yeah.
And I agree to an extent, although a lot of people say it's easy for you to say that. You got 17 years. Of course you're moaning about it, but I don't moan about it. I would probably like to see some parity. And how I see it is that I get it, that I think most, if not all of this people, it's got to be genetic. It's in you that you are attracted to children, because you can't make yourself be. And I think my theory is that that's why the powers that be only give them relative slaps on the wrist, because they will never say it publicly, of course, but I think maybe in their private thoughts and conversations, they do accept and understand that you probably can't stop these people without killing them.
You got to make an example of these people. If that some dirty old pedo has been with whatever, and he's been slapped on the wrist and got a 2-year sentence, he's out in a year, he comes out, changes his name, and he's offering around school. No, mate, get rid of him. There's no ifs or buts on this. It's like, get rid and make an example. There's all those other pedos as soon as start shitting themselves, go, I can't carry on what I'm doing.
Some of them will, but I think it's so entrenched in their DNA that it's only a matter of time before they fall off the wagon. Look,
who? What do you mean?
These nonces.
Yeah, the nonces.
They will
what do you
stop
mean fall off the wagon
and go back to being a nonce, because.
Well, I think once you're a nonce, you're always a nonce.
Oh, yeah.
Get rid of the nonces.
Yeah.
Like, there's no question about it.
That would be, a nice binary way to deal with it. And look, old me, part of today me, absolutely. I fucking hate them.
Yeah.
I hate them not just for personal reasons, but for the obvious reasons.
Yeah. Preying on vulnerable young kids. Yeah.
We were talking about Stuart Hall yesterday. It's a knockout from when I was a kid.
Was he one?
He is one, and he's still alive. He's a convicted paedophile. He's 95 years old. And,
him and Jimmy Savile, all that lot.
They're all coming out the woodwork.
They're all of that lot.
And I like that they're coming out the woodwork, because the barrier of protection is starting to be torn down.
But they're not getting punished.
No, not really.
Who's that fella off the BBC? The main fella off the BBC?
Hugh
Welsh
Edwards.
fella. Hugh Edwards.
Yeah.
500 grand a year. He got a pay rise when he was on bail. Got away with it.
Yeah.
He's going to float off now.
Yeah. He does.
He's got indecent images of underage kids on his phone. Like,
he had category A images as well, which are the worst, the very worst. I can only, thankfully, I can only imagine what they look like.
I couldn't even fucking put it in my mind. Dirty, dirty human being. Why is he? I feel I'm getting worked up here right now.
Well, no,
I'm fucking,
go with it. Go with it. Because it's right. There are certain things that do make you rage. If it's any help to you, I had certain interactions with certain nonces during my sentences that didn't end particularly well for them.
Tell me about it. I want to hear.
Well, I've bashed a few.
Yeah.
I've bashed a few. When we were in Belmarsh, we had a screw that used to give us the nod, and we'd go in on them and just fucking weigh them in. Yeah. And I remember one. It kind of is funny because we'd come out of the fella's cell and he'd been bashed, and he ran down to the bottom level where the screws could let him off the wing, get him off the spur. And as they opened the door and he's all battered, he's turned around and he's gone, I'm not a nonce, I'm a grass. And I mean, you can't help but laugh, can you? Because good. You got what you deserve then, you fucking moron.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've done a few bits, but they're hard to get hold of. They're well protected.
Do they protect?
Well protected.
A nonce, would a nonce be on a wing, or are all the nonces put in a nonce section?
they have the option, and that's what even a lot of prisoners don't understand this. You don't have to go on a VP unit because you're a nonce. You don't have to go there for any reason. You volunteer to go there. They'll ask you, say you're an accused rapist or people, you've come off the sweat box, you're in reception in your first jail. They will know why you're there, and they will say, right, would you like to go into a protected area? It's a choice, and a lot of people choose not to and take their chances, especially on my first sentence.
Is that right?
We were outing people all the time in Belmarsh, and now, they still get outed. I don't know if you know Tony Gooch. He's done a few podcasts and bits and bobs. I was a gym orderly in Highdown on my second sentence. One of the other gym orderlies got outed, kind of by one of the gym screws. That's what he lit the touch paper and let us all work it all out. I think Tony Gooch went in because he was his next door. As soon as they unlocked that morning, bosh, and then he was gone. And we used to see him on the VP unit when we used to go from the gym to collect the VP gym.
Yeah.
Strangely, he never decided to go and use the gym as a VP. But
what's a VP?
A vulnerable prisoner.
Okay.
So that can be a grass or someone who gets bullied, give them their due. VP units do have genuinely vulnerable people on there who get ruined by all the vultures and hyenas on a normal wing.
Yeah.
But mostly it's sex offenders and grasses.
Do you get to see, like, as a normal prisoner in there, do you get to see when they're all having lunch, dinner, breakfast, all the VPs, or is it all completely separate?
On my first sentence, it would be just one spur of a wing, say in Belmarsh. I was on house block 4 because I was a gym orderly for a year in Belmarsh, and one of the spurs there was VPs. I remember seeing Sean Jenkins back for his appeal. We used to see him going for their food, but we were locked on our spur. You can't even give it to them because the screws would just be on you.
Yeah.
But now they have whole wings of VPs. Belmarsh, I think, possibly has 2 wings now. I think it's Belmarsh. It might be Highdown. Anyway, so the numbers are up and up, but the numbers of alleged sex offenders or people that have a previous conviction but aren't there that time for the same thing, those numbers in normal population, I think the statistics are something like 15% of everyone. So, if you're standing in a line with 100 blokes, 15 of them, statistically speaking, are sex offenders either now or previous, and you don't know it, and you interact with these people. It used to piss me off all the time when because even as a relative kind of experienced prisoner, I still got caught out a couple of times towards the end of my second sentence, and I've done 15, 16 years at that point, and it used to piss me off, but what can you do?
What do you mean got caught out?
Like, someone would be there taking their chance, not a sex offender. I'm doing 8 years for GBH or whatever.
Or blag it. How do you get to find out? Is it normally the screw giving the heads up?
On the second sentence, it's fucking really easy now because not everyone, but there's much more phones in prison now, and you can just Google, boom, type their name into Google, type their name in and put, I do it now. I check out people now. Yeah. I'm out. It doesn't matter to me particularly. Put their name in and then put conviction, search it, it will come up.
Right.
I've discovered some quite shocking things actually doing that. People, obviously I'm not in prison anymore. I have no contact with any ex-prisoners mostly because I'm not allowed to. But I remember a guy I was a gym orderly with in Swellside years ago, lovely fella. He was in doing life for murdering his wife. At the time, the other 9 gym orderlies I worked with were all doing life for murdering their wife or partner. So I had to adjust my thinking about that, because they were people that I did kind of get on with. I worked with them. I had to get on with them. Anyway, this one particular guy, I won't say his name. I Googled him a couple of years ago, just after I got out, and the name clicked, but there was a different person with his surname. He was his son, one of his two sons, and he just got a big sentence for murdering an 80-something-year-old woman. He was in the pub, ran out of money, went out to get some more money, knocked on her door, beat her to death, and he pleaded guilty to murder on the proviso that the rape charge was dropped. He fucking this woman as well. I know. And so then I used to think about stuff like that, because I've often been asked the question about design and agency when it comes to criminal behaviour. I personally believe that there are certain criminal genes in people. Others disagree. Others say that it's just your environment shapes the person you become. It does to an extent, but that it interested me, because here we had a guy who's done a sentence for murder, and now his son's doing a sentence for murder. Yeah. I did a bit of study in Pentonville. I was asked to do a presentation about design and agency, and I found a case of a guy who was on death row in America, murder. Some guy on death row said to him, "You look like this bloke I know. Are you?" And he said no, but he didn't know he'd been adopted. Right. The guy in question was his dad, had been executed for murder. And then he later found out that his granddad, double murder, executed on death row.
So your environment around you as a kid.
I think the genes have to play a part. You can't have 3 generations of murderers without some kind of evolution link, surely.
Yeah. Tell me, name the 13 prisons you've been in and where they are in the country.
Okay, so I said I started off in Highdown. I'll do my first sentence. Went from Highdown.
Where is Highdown?
It's in Sutton in Surrey.
Okay.
Not far from Croydon.
Yeah.
Went from there to Belmarsh, which is Thamesmead, southeast London, not far from Woolwich and Greenwich. Went from there to Swaleside, which is on the Isle of Sheppey in Kent. It used to be part of what was called the prisons, the Sheppey cluster, because it's got Elmley and Stamford Hill all within sort of quarter of a mile of each other. Left Swaleside after just under 4 years and was category C then, so you progress to a category C jail. They're worse than category Bs. Did 3 months in Maidstone, but then that became a jail just for sex offenders and foreign nationals. So I was then moved to Coldingley in Surrey near Woking. Went from Coldingley to Stamford Hill. I was there for about 5 months, got thrown out. That was open prison. Put into Elmley next door when they threw me out. I got thrown out of Elmley by security because the gym officers gave me a gym job and they didn't like that. I spent a night in transit. I spent a night in Chelmsford. I don't remember the jail. And then was moved from there to High Point. And then I did a week in High Point, and then I spent my last 9 or 10 months in what was called Edmonds Hill, is now High Point North. And that's it, yeah. And then I was released from High Point North. High Point is in Suffolk. It's not far from Newmarket. Yeah. And Edmonds Hill's just down the road from there. So I've done a bit of a circuit. On the second one, I spent the first 3 years in Highdown again. And then I was moved to Coldingley back in Woking, so revisiting the same jail as before. I got E-list escorted out of Coldingley to Pentonville, North London. And then I got moved from Pentonville to Onley, which is near Rugby, not far from Coventry.
Yeah.
And then, so I was stuck, what is to me and you, up north.
Yeah.
And they call that a London jail.
Yeah.
How? I don't know. And then I got my category D and I went to Stamford Hill again. Got thrown out of Stamford Hill again and did my last 6 months in Elmley again, which is basically a BCAT local. So, yeah, I've done a bit of a tour. I think I wasn't keen on Pentonville, and I was pissed off being put up north in Onley because I knew I'd never have a
Visitor, yeah.
I don't ask people to visit me. If they want to, great, but I'm not dragging people halfway around the country for what? To sit there and fill me up with chocolate and then have to drive back.
Yeah.
No. So yeah, I've done 13 if you include the Chelmsford night.
How mad's that?
There's about 129 prisons, I think, in the prison system of England and Wales. So I've done about, 10% of them.
10%.
Yeah. But again, going back to that kind of thing of being in the unit in Belmarsh, I would have also, I was interested to do a bit of time in dispersal because it's pretty well known through the system. Dispersal's pretty hardcore. And it can be, and it'll have things like religious divide and the cultural divide is always there, but it's never necessarily a problem. It's just people tend to gravitate towards their own people.
Yeah.
But I heard a lot of quite shocking stories on my second sentence about extremists. I'm very aware, and I do understand, and I'm careful not to say, Islam is this and it's wrong, because it isn't, but there are certain, how it goes.
Yeah.
There are certain elements, certain people, certain groups of people who cherry pick what they want from the situation to meet their own ends. And I get that. We're going down the road of talking about terrorism basically, and that's not my bag. It's too complex an area.
What are the worst top 3 prisons you've been to?
From my personal point of view, I found Belmarsh really difficult for the first year or so. Again, because of the psychological aspect as I saw it. I mean, when I was a gym orderly, I was down the gym all day. You never get a chance to make a phone call. I'd come back from work. I'd have to be escorted back to the wing and then escorted to my cell. Screws on the wing. I'd say, Gov, do me a favour. Let me have a couple of minute call with my daughter. She's just come back from school. No, sorry, mate. And you think, fucking hell, I'd never get a chance. And it's the one thing for me back then was the one thing that just kept me going. That was really difficult. Pentonville was an absolute carsy, shithole jail.
North London.
Yeah, I really didn't like it at all. And I've said this on our first podcast, and there were quite a lot of comments there underneath that I saw saying, well, don't fucking do any crime then. It's not a fucking hotel. I never called prison a holiday or a hotel. They're all shit to me. It's a punishment, and that's right. It's just. But Pentonville was bad. I found it bad, and some people will enjoy that, and I get it. That's fine. But if I'm asked a question, I give an answer. Don't start beating me for it. Number 3. From a personal point of view, I didn't like High Point because I got my face cut in there for no reason, like a failed robbery that I stopped of my stuff, and I ended up getting cut, and I got blamed by the prison for it. They said it was all me that instigated everything, and so it pissed me off. I was only there for a week, and they moved me because I wouldn't grass up the 2 people that did it, and I couldn't, even if I wanted to. I'm not a grass, but even if I wanted to, I didn't know them. I'd only been in the jail 12 hours when it happened. So how the prison blamed me for it, and they kept harassing me, we want information. I said, just fuck off. Just leave me alone. I'm just finishing a 17 here.
Yeah.
By the time they got fed up asking me what happened and all this, they just moved me out of jail. So those 3 weren't great. The rest, they're all much of a muchness, really, Dodge. The important thing, and you know, lots of guys understand this, and it's to their credit and to their benefit. Wherever you are in life or in prison, you just try to make the best of it. If it's a shithole, if it's ruining your life every day, just what's the alternative? I always ask, what's the alternative? There isn't one, right? So fucking get on with it. Make the best of it. Be proactive. And I always did that. Even like by the time I left Belmarsh, I was relatively comfortable there. I was a gym orderly for a year. The gym screws were brilliant in there to me. You know, they would help with all the things that you can never get done. And I understood how it worked. After 2 years, I was fully aware of how things work. And once you just become assimilated to your environment, and it makes it easier. You can keep trying to push against it all, but you're just using your own energy.
I get it. Piers, part 2, mate, has been fascinating hearing all about this. Thanks for your honesty.
No, listen, that's my kind of MO, if you like.
Yeah.
Now with Dodge. So there's tons and tons of stuff, and it could go on forever, but we have to stop somewhere. And I really appreciate you asking me back. I said actually before I walked in, somehow I felt a little bit nervous about it all today, but as you did last time, mate, it's just like having a chat across a bar in a pub with a mate. So I really appreciate that, mate. And I enjoyed it.
Quality. Good man, Piers.
Thanks.
Nice
Dodge.
one. Nice one. You
Good
take care,
you, mate.
Nice one. Good to see
Cheers.
you. Fucking hell, that's good. Mate, that's really good, Piers. Wow. That's really fucking good. Thanks for watching, guys. If you'd like to see someone on the show, leave a comment below. And if you haven't already, do us a favour, show us a bit of love, press the subscribe button, and it allows us to grow the show even bigger and bigger each week. Nice one.